Hi everybody! It's the end of the month, so it's time to show you all the pictures I coloured during February of 2023. And my theme for this month was sci-fi, which is chosen by my son. So I'll try to show you in the same order that I coloured them again, like I did last month. And this is the one I started with. This is Ladies of Leisure, the first one by Zan von Zed, and this is the first picture that I coloured. And that's this one here. And for this one, I googled sci-fi colour palettes, and it gave me like two different kinds, which was the kind of dark industrial grey concrete, dark metal kind of colour palettes, and the neon colour palettes. So I tried to combine them both into this picture and use kind of a mixture of both, giving her the grey kind of jumpsuit, dark background, and I tried to make it look as if her hair was glowing neon. I'm not quite sure how well that's turned out, but yeah, I gave her a marker base, mainly a marker base for that one, and worked on top with my usual Arteza Castle Arts kind of pencils. And for this glow around her hair there, I used a bit of chalk pastel and blended it a very, very slight amount just to give it that kind of sort of glow onto her skin and her clothes there. So yeah, I'm kind of on the fence about that one. I'm not sure whether it's worked quite as well as I intended it to, but there she is. That's the first picture that I coloured in Zan von Zed and Ladies of Leisure. The next one I coloured is from this one, Dreams of Dragons and Dragonkin by Ravynne Phelan, and this is one I coloured for the tutorial on how to use super tips as watercolours. So if you've seen that tutorial video, you'll recognise this one if I can find him. There he is. Yeah, this is the one I coloured for the tutorial. So he's coloured with Crayola Super Tips used as watercolour, just coloured onto the page and then gone over with a paintbrush and water to give these nice kind of watercolour effects. And this bit here with the little dots is where I spattered, because the colour had collected onto the brush after I'd gone over this area with water, and I just spattered it on to give another nice little watercolour effect going on here. There's some silver gel pen for the stars, white gel pen here for these little stars in the background. Some, yeah, the white highlights on his face. I did shade it with a black pencil and a white pencil for like the shadows and the highlights, just to give a bit more depth, like behind his ears and his head. Those were Castle Arts Gold that I shaded with. And yeah, I was really pleased with how he turned out. I did base him on the colour scheme of the original painting that I found by Ravynne Phelan. Obviously mine is a little bit brighter, hers was more toned down, and hers was actually acrylic. I thought it was watercolour at the time, but no, hers was actually acrylic, which must have been quite watered down because it did have these kind of blending effects in it, which is, yeah, you'd have to have quite watery acrylic to be able to do that. But yeah, I was really pleased with how he turned out. And that's the next one I coloured, from Dreams of Dragon and Dragonkin by Ravynne Phelan. The next couple are from some books that I got second hand off of eBay, and they were pages that had already been started, which I worked into to kind of give my own spin on it. And this one, I'll try and insert a picture here, what it looked like before I started. If my editing skills are up to scratch, I will put a picture in here. So there we go, that's what it looked like before I started. This one was also a tutorial on working into a already started page. So yeah, that one's up on the channel, and you might recognise this one if you've seen that tutorial. But yeah, as you saw from the previous picture, these faces were already coloured. This little green guy was coloured, I think, and the army guy there. Everything else I added in with marker base. I think, yeah, marker base I added in. These bits were coloured with water-based markers, some sort of super tip, felt pen, sort of water-based markers. So I diluted those as best I could, mopped up the colour. It wasn't working quite as well as it did in the Dragons book, but I managed to dilute the colour quite a bit and sop it up with a paper towel to make that a little bit paler. Worked on top of that with, I think that was Castle Arts Gold pencils as well. Yeah, it's just shading on top of those. The rest of it I gave a marker base, worked on top with the pencils, and I tried to keep it kind of monochrome because this is from quite an old episode of Doctor Who, quite an old series, so I wanted to keep it kind of black and white, to give that feeling like retro TV sort of thing. This bit here is paper collage, where I cut out a shape because there was a pattern there with circles and stuff that had been started to be colouring, and I couldn't figure out what to do with that, so in the end I just cut it out, and I stuck behind it a page from an old Doctor Who annual that my son was getting rid of, so I put that behind there and used that as the background. Some sort of green and blue and red, which I think fitted in with my colour scheme, so yeah, I used that as a background for that picture there, and I think that worked quite well considering what it looked like when I started. So that one is the Doctor Who colouring book by James Newman, Lee Teng-Chu and Ian Smith. But I'm not sure which one actually drew that picture I coloured in, I'm afraid. So, but those are the artists, and that's the book, Doctor Who colouring book. The next one is another Doctor Who colouring book, and another page that was already started. And I think I did give you a quick glimpse of it in the tutorial for the last page that I showed you. But here we go. I'll add a picture here for what it looked like before I started. Pretty bright. So yeah, quite a lot of work I needed to be doing on that one. Here we go. This is what I've worked into that one and come up with. Ta-da! Yeah, how I did this one. I looked up the publicity picture for this episode. It's called Cold War, I think. Yeah, Cold War 2013. So yeah, and in this one, in this episode, apparently they're on a kind of submarine during the Cold War era, and the publicity shot for it was kind of shot through a kind of a porthole effect, which was basically like this. I tried to copy it as best I could. And it's the same green guy from the last picture, I think. They're kind of frozen kind of super soldiers, and he managed to thaw out because it was an accident with the submarine and everything's going wrong. So the red alert light was on, which is why the lighting is all red. And I thought I could use that to my advantage with the Doctor's kind of bright pink suit there. I went over with water, toned it down as much as I could, and then worked on top with that red pencils to shade it, to try and blend it into this kind of emergency lighting situation we've got going on. And I think that's worked quite well in the end. To get this effect, I drew around a side plate, and I blacked out the whole of the background, leaving the circle, blacked everything else out with the black acrylic, and then I worked on top of that with a gouache paint and a white gel pen. These shapes I drew with a stencil and just kind of freehand did a little circle in the middle to look like nuts and bolts holding the window. The background I did with alcohol marker and just shaded on top of that. There's highlights with white gel pen. There's a little bit of shading on the edges here with the red pencil just to give the effect. The emergency light is there reflecting off the edges of the windows. And yeah, I was really pleased with how that one turned out. It's not exactly the same as the publicity shot that I did see, but yeah, I was really pleased with how it turned out, considering what I was working with. And it did help get rid of the background, which was all these pipe works and stuff. As if you saw in the original picture, it was all pipe works filling up the rest of the page, and I'm not about doing repetitive kind of pattern type stuff. So yeah, it kind of helped me block all that out. So the little bit of pipes I had to do, yeah, that wasn't too bad. Just a little bit of shading on top of the marker base, really. Yeah, quite pleased with how that one turned out. That one, again, is from Doctor Who. This one's called Doctor Who Travels Through Time. Illustrations by James Newman Gray, Lee Teng-Chu and Ian Smith. So I'm not sure which one drew that picture I coloured, but yeah, the Doctor Who Travels in Time colouring book. Next I moved on to Colouring Heaven. I don't have many sci-fi kind of themed books, so I moved on to this one, which is Fairytopia Special by Mystic Art Mirrors. And these designs possibly also on her Etsy store. This is the first one I used. And I transformed this little girl into an alien to try and fit in with my sci-fi kind of theme. I gave her a marker base, as you can see. That will be a hoo-hoo markers. This gold jewellery is really quick gold kind of effect with a gold Sharpie, just shaded with pencil and white gel pen. She's shaded with Castle Arts and Arteza pencils. And this background I made with Arteza Expert watercolour pencils. I figured I'd try and make some kind of galaxy sort of effect behind her with watercolour pencils, because I haven't tried that for a long time. I think it worked quite well. I added a little bit of Dovecraft glitter glue onto the background as well. Let me get that too. Yeah, it's glittering a little bit there. We can see the little bit of glitter in the background as well. Yeah, I think she turned out pretty well. I did add a little bit of a pinky colour into her cheeks, a peachy pinky colour, just to give her a bit of blushy cheeks that I like to do. But all in all, yeah, she was a pretty quick one, but yeah, pretty effective, I think, and I do like the way she turned out. And the second one I worked on in here is also a tutorial, sort of colour along sort of thing. I wasn't exactly sure. I was just testing my tablet to see if it was working after its stint of not working. But yeah, it did work, so I put the video up, and it's kind of a tutorial on how I coloured this one. She's mostly a marker base, I think. And again, I turned her into an alien, one of the Na'vi aliens from the Avatar films, because she really reminded me of one with the dots under her eyes and the stripes on her skin, which I think is supposed to be war paint of some sort, but I went with what I thought and added a few more stripes down her neck, down her arm, to turn her into the alien. I added in this circle as well and carried on a few bits of her hair just to come over the edges to kind of look a bit better. Yeah, just marker base. I think it was mainly Arteza pencils I shaded that one with. I think there was one Castlard's Gold brown in the leaves there and on these feathers. White gel pen. And this background was done. It was a bit of an experiment with watercolour pencils to see what kind of effect I could get going on with those. I think it's worked quite well, but looking back on it, I think I'd have been a little bit happier if I'd have left some of these more kind of blobby kind of circles instead of making them really neat little kind of bokeh background effect. I don't know. I'm not sure if it would have worked a little bit better, but yeah, that's what I feel looking back on it. Overall, though, I think, yeah, she looks really cool. She came out pretty much exactly how I thought she would. So yeah, that one is another one from Fairytopia Special, Colouring Heaven by Mystic Art Mirrors. The next one is From the Way Home by Morgan O'Brien, and this one I did as a colour along on the channel, or an attempt at a colour along. There we go, there he is. And this one was done using the Giotto Stilnovo skin tone pencils, which I received as a gift, so that I try and try them out in this book and try and give the effect of like a sepia photograph sort of going on there. So that's the result I came out with there. And yeah, the pencils did seem to work quite well on this paper because they're fairly hard pencils, and this is Amazon paper, which is, yeah, a little bit rough. There are a few kind of grainy areas where the colour hasn't quite covered properly. I think you'd have to put quite a lot of work in to actually get a burnished effect going on with those kind of pencils, but I wanted it to be a little bit grainy anyway, like a sepia kind of photograph, so that was fine with me. I just left it as is, and yeah, fairly pleased with how he's turned out considering the range of pencils. And yeah, that's The Way Home by Morgan O'Brien. The next one is Still Whip. I started it and got a little bit bogged down, I think, with all the details. This is from Steampunk Special, Colouring Heaven by Matt and Dawn Davidson. And the one I started, I copied onto a brown paper. Stayed with the same Giotto pencils. That's the picture there. I've copied her onto the brown paper. I stayed with the same pencils because I wanted to see what the pencils would look like on brown paper. And I don't think they work quite as well as they do on the white paper, to be honest. I had to use a cream Arteza pencil to get a bit of highlights, and I used a black. It could have been an Arteza black to get the darker shadows. She's coming along pretty well, I think. I kind of got bogged down in all the details because it's a very, very detailed picture. There's not super much to do, so I will try and finish her along with the ones that I colour for this month. Yeah, I think the colours are working quite well for it to give it that kind of retro feel again. So yeah, I'm kind of pleased with how she's coming along, but I just got a bit lost in all the details and I needed a break. So she's kind of on the back burner for a little bit while I do some more simpler things to try and clear my head a little bit. And this is the one I moved on to, which is not sci-fi themed, I'm afraid. This is Little Cutie Special, Colouring Heaven. I moved on to this one just to clear my head a little bit after all those details I was colouring in, and I coloured in this one. This is by Daria Sakisoy, I think you say it. Yeah, this is the one I moved on to. Nice little simple one to clear my brain a little bit after all the detail of the steampunk kind of space lady. This one I coloured with my the Big Kids pencils, just to give me a little kind of relaxing colouring page to do. I did use a black and a white polychromos pencils because I ordered those and they came and I wanted to test them out. I used the black just for this butterfly the edges of his wings, and I used the white as a blender, which seemed to work quite well. I do want to use them on different paper to see how I get on with those, but yeah, they seem to work quite well in this picture. There's also white gel pen. There's some Dovecraft glitter glue just on her wings to give a little bit of sparkle. And these are little embellishments I picked up at the local charity shop, these little flowers, and I thought they fitted in quite well with the cutesy kind of fairy there. So yeah, that's the last one that I did this month. And the theme for next month that I'm going to move on to is going to be gemstones and crystals, because a while back I did a video, first versus the last, where I had to find the first crystal or gemstone I coloured and the last crystal or gemstone I coloured, and I realised that I haven't coloured very many at all. I think the two I picked out were the only two I'd actually coloured. So yeah, next month I'm moving on to do gemstones and try and work on colouring those and figuring out different ways to colour those. If anybody does have any ideas for themes, monthly themes that I could possibly use, then yeah, feel free to suggest things. I do have a few ideas, and a couple of people have picked themes for specific months that they wanted to do. So yeah, that will be next month. It will be gemstones, and that's the last of the pictures I coloured this month. I hope you enjoyed this video. Take care, everyone. See you in future videos. Bye.